but we're going to go through the Mount Rushmore of the Daytona 500, and we'll be doing this for every racetrack throughout the season. I'll be giving my personal Mount Rushmore for every racetrack and or crown jewel event. So this isn't all Daytona stats that I went through. It's just Daytona 500 stats that I went through for this Mount Rushmore. So let's go through the Mount Rushmore of the Daytona 500. All right. And we're going to have to start off with this guy. We got a legend of the sport, many consider to be probably a Mount Rushmore driver of the sport, and that would be Cale Yarborough. 4 wins in the Great American Race, 4 runner-up finishes, 10 top 5s, which is third all time, 14 top 10s, which is third all time, and 553 laps led in the Great American Race, which is fourth all time. And he was also involved in that fight in the infield, or that's what it's called. That's what they make the call of, but it's really right on the inside of 3 and 4. He could have won another one, and he's part of one of the biggest moments in NASCAR history. That moment really put our sport on the map, I would say. All right, let's take a look on who I have next on this list. And most people, I think, would consider this driver the greatest of all time. I personally wouldn't have him as the greatest of all time, but he is the king, and he's probably the king of the Great American Race, and that is Richard Petty. Of course, I mentioned earlier, his father, Lee Petty, won the inaugural Daytona 500. Well, his son, Richard Petty, came in here and won the Daytona 500 7 times. Insane numbers. 11 top 5s in the Great American Race, which is second all time. 16 top 10s, which is tied for first. 780 laps led in the Great American Race, which is first for the king. The king is the king of the Daytona 500. And then I think some people might be a little bit surprised about this next driver because he does only technically have 1 win in this event, but he's been so close so many times. He's always been one of the most dominating drivers at Daytona, especially in this Great American Race, and he has a bunch of fantastic finishes, but he only has that 1 win in 1998. And of course, I'm talking about Dale Earnhardt Sr. If it will pull up. I'm going to have to pull this up manually, it looks like. Dale Earnhardt Sr., 1 win in 1998, but I didn't even know this stat. This stat was kind of staggering, and that is 5 runner-up finishes in the Great American Race. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 second-place finishes in the Great American Race, which is first all time. He also has the most top 5s in the history of the Daytona 500 with 12. He's tied for first for the most top 10s with 16 with the king Richard Petty, and then he's second all time in laps led with 686 laps led in the Great American Race. Just insane stats from Dale Earnhardt, the Intimidator, who did only get that win in 1998 and probably one of the most, if not the most, iconic victory in the history of NASCAR, winning that 1998 Daytona 500. Of course, pulled down pit lane, and every pit crew member from every team walked out and wanted to give him a high five or shake his hand. They wanted to congratulate him because they know how hard he worked for this. They know how much he wanted it, and they knew how close he's came so many times in this event. It just seemed like no matter what happened near the end, no matter how good he was at the end of some of these races, he would just have issues. Something would go wrong. He freaking ran into a bird one year. It's just insane on everything he went through, and then finally got it done in 1998. All right, and then this last member of the Mount Rushmore I think would be controversial for some people, but I had to put him on the list, and he's currently the active win leader of the Daytona 500, and going through all the stats, and there was a couple people that came just short. I was debating between this guy and then a couple other drivers, but I had to pick him. Dennis the Menace. Denny Hamlin is my final driver on the Mount Rushmore for the Daytona 500. Denny Hamlin had 3 wins, 8 top 5s, 8 top 10s, and 490 laps led in the Daytona 500, which would put him 5th all time. So I think the first three for me were very easy. Cale Yarborough, Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt. I was satisfied on those. And then I was debating between Hamlin and Jeff Gordon pretty much for that fourth and final spot. And I had to give it to Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin still has a couple years potentially left ahead of him in his career. So maybe he can get a couple more Daytona 500 victories. We will have to see. But Cale Yarborough, Dale Earnhardt, Richard Petty, and Denny Hamlin are my Mount Rushmore for the Daytona 500. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Who is your Mount Rushmore for the Daytona 500? I'd be very surprised if you didn't have 3 out of those 4. I would not be surprised if a lot of you put in Gordon instead of Hamlin. I really had a big debate about that, and I eventually decided on Denny Hamlin. But let me know your thoughts in the comments.